Hey, it's Jordan with Status Coup. I don't think I've ever done this actually, but I'm going to ask you to watch this full entire video. And I know your time is valuable because I think this is one of the most important reports I've done in a while. I'm sad this Monday morning for many reasons, which I'll get to. But right now, the media is focused on tomorrow's Michigan primary. They're not focused because they actually care about the genocide that is being committed on Palestinians in Gaza at the hands of Israel. They're not focused or worried because President Biden is writing a blank check for that. They're focused on, is this going to actually hurt him in the 2024 election because of the uncommitted campaign, which is a campaign in Michigan right now where Arab Americans and their allies are urging voters to vote uncommitted in the Michigan primary rather than vote for President Biden, to send him a message to stop funding this senseless, heinous, horrific genocide. Well, I'm here to tell you there is another genocide going on right here in America, right here in Michigan. But first, let's show you what Governor Gretchen Whitmer had to say when asked about this uncommitted campaign in the Michigan primary.
How many uncommitted votes do you think we're going to see on Tuesday? How worried are you?
Well, I'm not sure what we're going to see on Tuesday, to tell you the truth. I can tell you this, that Michigan has been so fortunate to be the home of a robust Arab, Muslim, Palestinian community and a robust Jewish community. We've lived in harmony as neighbors for decades, and there's a lot of pain all across all of these communities because of what's happening halfway around the world. This is, I think, a very high stakes moment. I'm encouraging people to cast an affirmative vote for President Biden. I understand the pain that people are feeling, and I'll continue to work to build bridges with folks in all of these communities because they're all important to me, they're all important to Michigan, and I know they're all important to President Biden as well.
I understand your pain. I'm going to build bridges as your families continue to be slaughtered in Gaza due to President Biden's blank check to Benjamin Netanyahu and the nonstop weapons, missiles, and 2,000-pound bombs we're helping supply Israel with to slaughter your family. But I'm for building bridges, and I understand your pain. That's what she's saying there. The New York Times, as always, it's been the New York Times, the Washington Post, and many other outlets wrote a fluff piece over the weekend to show this isn't actually about genocide. This is about Gretchen Whitmer and her fight. Nauseating headline, Gretchen Whitmer's biggest electoral test. Can she deliver Michigan for Biden? Because that's what we're focused on. And by the way, there's a whole scandal with the New York Times now, because apparently one of the writers on their story about alleged mass rape by Hamas against Israelis on October 7th, one of the reporters on that story apparently liked or retweeted a tweet calling for Gaza to become a slaughterhouse. Yes. But as the media focuses on the electoral implications of Michigan's primary, I want to tell you about another genocide going on in Michigan that you don't hear about on MSNBC or CNN, that Governor Whitmer is helping to perpetrate. If you haven't seen this, this is from our coverage in Kalamazoo, Michigan, just a few months ago. Kalamazoo, Michigan is on the west part of town. And in Kalamazoo, Michigan, there is a multi-billion-dollar paper mill, Graphic Packaging, that has been releasing toxic gas for well over a decade in a primarily Black community, killing the residents, sickening the residents. And Governor Whitmer knows all about it, and she's helping the company poison the city. Let's take a look.
And this is at whatever time it is now, probably 6 o'clock. What is being released from that plant?
There's over 30 different toxic gases and chemicals: sulfur dioxide, hydrogen sulfide, methyl mercaptan, all kinds of VOCs that cause cancer. I mean, the list is so long. Toluene. the list is long, and every single one of the toxic gases or toxic chemicals cause a disease like cancer, respiratory disease, kidney disease, you name it.
Daughter to an asthma attack. Then she was 17. Then I found my son unresponsible. He couldn't breathe to an asthma attack. Now, due to that, my son has a trach. He's on 24-hour oxygen, and I have a life support machine at my house.
How old is your son?
My son is 32. And he fight every day to stay alive. And my daughter was 17. And I have asthma really, really bad. And my daughter's twin sister has asthma really, really bad. She stay in the hospital like every 2 days. I have to take her to the emergency room to get a real good asthma treatment.
That is Kalamazoo, Michigan. Myself and my cameraman just standing next to that paper mill that's releasing over 30 forms of toxic gas. We both got sick. Colin, my producer and cameraman on that trip, had a headache for a week. I had a headache for days. These people are living there. But it gets worse. I want you to hear more about Deanne's son and what he has gone through.
Your son also is 32. He's on life support. Can you talk about what his health was before you moved closer and how it has gone downhill since then?
Well, before we moved here, my son's health was perfect. It wasn't nothing he didn't do. He always was healthy. He was always going and doing. And then one day we was getting ready to go to Ramona Beach. And he loved going to the beach, so I called his name, like, DeAndre, we ready, let's go. And there was no response. So I sent a guy that called me Mom. I sent him up there to see why DeAndre wasn't answering me. And he yelled down for us to call 911, say DeAndre wasn't breathing. And that's how that all began. He had a severe asthma attack that caused him to stop breathing. And we all went on from there.
And how old was he when that happened?
5 years ago, let's see, he was 32 now.
27, 28?
Yeah, he was about 27. Just turned 27.
And was he out and about a lot in this community, and he complained about the smells?
Yes, very badly. Very badly. He never had asthma or anything. I mean, he had it a little bit as he was coming up, but the doctor said he was so active that he was growing out of it. So it wasn't like he had to take asthma treatments or the inhaler or anything. He didn't have to take no medications for his asthma because he was growing out of it. And then as soon as we moved over here, it just, like I said, we went to go check on him and he wasn't breathing. And the doctor said he had an asthma attack that was so severe it stopped his heart, the same way my daughter passed. So it's been touch and go with him. We've been called to the hospital about 5 times to say our goodbyes. The last time they called us to the hospital, his heart, his liver, his kidneys, everything shut down on him. Wasn't nothing working. They told us to come say our goodbyes to him. And we went in there and we went to praying over him. And about 3 hours later, the doctor called me like, your son is woke. He's back. And I'm like, wow, that's a blessing. But he lost his front memory. He just had the memory of in his back of his head.
That interview with Deanne, and I was wearing a mask because a block away from that paper mill, the smell is still overwhelming, and I was trying not to inhale it. These people live there. That was in April of 2023. This past weekend, Deanne's son, DeAndre, died at 33 years old. His heart stopped. He did not have significant asthma or respiratory problems until moving near this plant. After repeated severe asthma attacks, which affected his heart, repeated trips to the hospital, less than a year after that interview, her 33-year-old son died. This on top of her 17-year-old daughter died several years ago of a severe asthma attack. Her other children have asthma and COPD. This is happening in America, in Kalamazoo, Michigan. I've seen it. I've smelt it. There are kids in this community that go to school that do not go out for recess because of the smell. Children do not go out to play in this neighborhood because of the smell. Governor Whitmer and her health and her environmental department have known about this for years. There have been complaints for years. Not only have they done worse than nothing, they helped this paper mill expand. Yes, they helped this billion-dollar paper mill expand. This is from 2021. Graphic Packaging holding to receive private bonds to finance expansion plans. Graphic Packaging, a packaging firm based in Atlanta, is expected to receive up to $125 million in private bonds to finance the expansion of its paper mill in Kalamazoo, Michigan. The Michigan Economic Development Corporation's Strategic Fund Board approved a resolution this month that allows this financing to move forward. The Michigan Economic Development Board is an arm of the state government. The governor appoints members of the board. So when the Michigan Economic Development Board, which by the way is just a board of donors and rich people and former politicians, it's a cesspool, the governor knows about it and the governor's involved. And they helped expand this paper mill, this plant. And since that expansion, it has been releasing even more forms of toxic gas that is now going even beyond the poor black community. The white folks are smelling it, and some of them are getting sick. This is happening in America. Of course, we should care about the genocide going on in Gaza, but there's genocide going on right here. By the way, this came out last year. After a 3-year study, they needed 3 years to study this, the health department. Graphic Packaging's toxic gas levels may pose health risks. New data shows. Concentration of toxic gas in the air near the Graphic Packaging facility in Kalamazoo are public. For the first time, the company's paper mill published its data. The data over the past years has shown hydrogen sulfide concentrations near the factory as high as 4 parts per billion. Hydrogen sulfide is a foul-smelling gas that can cause health issues in humans exposed to it. The federal government says levels shouldn't exceed 1.4 parts per billion. By the way, even that study is bullshit because the numbers are much, much higher. And they did not test for all the other toxic gases that are being released. They tested for several other gases for 3 days over 3 years. But I have had residents send me levels of hydrogen sulfide being released that are literally hundreds of parts per billion when the level is supposed to be 1.4 parts per billion. This is literally pumping toxic poison into a poor black community. Meanwhile, the media is writing puff pieces about Gretchen Whitmer and can she save Biden in Michigan during the Michigan primary, while she is perpetrating a genocide on the people. She's allowing this to happen out in the open, and the national media doesn't report on it. The state and local media barely report on it. They don't care. And of course, there's a longer genocide going on in Michigan, one that I've covered now for 8 years, that I have a book coming out this summer about, and that would be in Flint, Michigan. Over the weekend, sadly, Flint Councilman Eric Mays died at 65. We don't know the cause of death yet. Mays was a gladiator, known for his bare knuckle politics and his potty mouth. Let me give you just one example of that.
Damn, damn, damn. It's a bunch of bullshit. And I want the whole city to know it. And I'm going to point fingers. Monica Galloway arguing, fussing. And she the main one. He's doing points of orders. He's doing points of information. Mr. President, I want to hear from you.
Point of order.
I stick by it. I call you a handkerchief head Negro. I call him a handkerchief head Negro. And I'm sticking with it. Google it.
I'm going to give you
Mr. Metcalf,
a warning.
can you come take care of this foolishness? Now do it again and you'll be gone.
Please finish.
Don't interrupt me. I'm 59 years old, finna be 60 and grown. You don't care if I'm 100, but I ain't 100. I ain't 3. You give me respect. I can holler and speak if I want to.
Councilman Mays, please refrain from your profanity.
Hell yeah. It shouldn't be fine. We got folks sitting in business and I wouldn't care if you was the chair, the sofa, the TV.
Mr. Mays, you are out of order. We are
You out of order.
all right. Go.
You're talking about everybody.
Lower your voice.
I ain't gonna lower my voice. Quit talking to me. What you telling me to?
I'm telling you to lower
Okay,
your voice.
what if I don't?
Mays became enemy number one of corporate corrupt establishment politicians on the state and local level, but he was beloved by the residents of Flint because he actually fought for them, and he represented residents in Flint's first ward, which is the poorest part of Flint on the north side. He was the first Flint city councilman who actually listened to residents in the early part of the Flint water crisis. He marched with residents as the other Flint council people and the mayor and the emergency manager and Governor Snyder lied to them, telling them that the water was fine. 10 years later, in April will be 10 years, the water is still contaminated in Flint. And oh, by the way, you don't hear this in the media. Flint is now one of the fastest rising cancer clusters in America. Do you think Flint is now a cancer cluster because of the weather? Could a spike in cancer cases in the Flint area be linked to the water crisis, the local media asks? No, it must be the weather that caused it. Do you hear it? Did you know that Flint had a major cancer cluster? Kind of happens when you have acidic, corrosive, toxic water filled with heavy metals like lead, filled with bacteria pumping through your pipes for 2 years. And by the way, even beyond the 2 years, because they still, 10 years later, have not replaced all of the pipes in Flint, Michigan. And oh, by the way, to the people on Twitter who say, hey, Flint's water is fine now, stop making it up. Well, latest testing shows lead in Flint's water, but levels remain below the federal threshold. This from December, where the lead levels were found at, they tested just 61 sites, 31 businesses and 31 residences and 30 businesses, 10 parts per billion of lead a decade later. And let me tell you why this is completely deceiving and bullshit. First off, you cannot declare a city's anything fine off of 61 homes and businesses. But the EPA's action level for lead is 15 parts per billion. As any expert will tell you, that's bullshit too. The level should be 0. And any amount of lead in water is dangerous for children particularly, but also the immune compromised, which everybody in Flint is immune compromised because of the toxic poisonous water that went through their pipes and into their taps for 2 years. But they say, it's under the EPA's bullshit arbitrary lead level, so everything's fine. You know, as a Jew, I'm not religious, but I take the word genocide seriously. And I've made clear that I believe what's going on in Gaza is genocide. But there's a lot of genocide going on in America every day, out in the open, quietly, that the politicians cover up, that the media covers up, and that politicians that are beloved by the New York Times, the Washington Post, CNN, like Gretchen Whitmer, because of her folksy Midwestern voice and twang and her embrace of identity politics, that they are helping to embolden. Kalamazoo, Michigan is an urgent crisis. Flint, Michigan is an urgent crisis. We cover it here all the time. I hope you realize now there's more than just genocide in Gaza. There is a slower more systematic, corporate-dominated genocide going on right here in America. And people are dying, and people are getting sick. Something needs to be done.